Let's talk Manchester United, shall we? Because they suffered their 10th league defeat of the season in what was a 2-1 loss to Fulham at Old Trafford. To put that into context, Sir Alex Ferguson never suffered 10 league losses in 21 Premier League campaigns, but it has now happened to United 5 times in the past 11 seasons. Joining us now to look back on the game is talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, and in particular right now, a very disappointed Manchester United fan. Morning to you, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Good morning. That stat hasn't cheered me up much, it has to be said.
No. The thing is, Alex, is that, you know, the die-hard fans, and you're one of them, you watch United week in, week out, and even if you're not working on them, you still catch up on about them as a club. And it was the way they were beaten that's been the bigger issue for me, because this has happened too often, the manner of the defeat.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Cass. I think there's a misconception that spoiled Manchester United fans think it should still be like the glory days under Sir Alex Ferguson, when they're winning Premier Leagues and lifting European Cups. Nobody believes that Manchester United have a divine right to victory, but there's a minimum standard in terms of effort and commitment, and that standard was lacking once again yesterday. It's been lacking for much of the season. And what worries me most is that Erik ten Hag has come out afterwards and said that his side showed character and personality. Well, they were two qualities that were badly lacking. Basically, the Manchester United manager is asking the fans and anyone who was there, and our own Mickey Gray was very scathing of the performance, to disbelieve what they're watching with their own eyes. And the lack of effort, I think, is epitomised by one Marcus Rashford. I've been amongst the United fans a lot this season. There's a growing frustration with Rashford, not because he's not scoring goals in the numbers that he was last year, not even because he's missing opportunities, but the lack of effort when it comes to tracking back and leading the press. There was that clip that was going around even after the victory against Luton last week, when it was a half-hearted attempt from Rashford to close down Ross Barkley, and Barkley basically just skips away from him. And I think it's a massive problem. If you're Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and Dave Brailsford was there in the crowd yesterday, and you're watching that, you're wondering, is there a big problem here in the dressing room? Are these players playing for their manager? And it didn't look like a performance yesterday that suggested they are.
I mean, what's interesting as well, you know, you talked about what Erik ten Hag has said after the game, but he's also mentioned about the bigger picture looks good for Manchester United. It sounds like you're not sold by that. You're not buying into what he's saying. And then couple that in with some of the performances, like you mentioned with Marcus Rashford. Is it going to be a big summer for United coming up in terms of maybe incomings and outgoings? Is Rashford a player who's been linked with PSG that you would see happily take money for to get rid of him?
Well, first and foremost, when Erik ten Hag talks about the bigger picture is that United have lost 10 games. They've just lost to Fulham at home for the first time in 20 years. They crashed out of a Champions League group they should have gone through relatively comfortably, and didn't even end up with the consolation prize at the Europa League. They didn't defend the Carabao Cup. They're not part of that final today. They've got Forest away in the FA Cup in midweek, which for me is a massive game because it's the only chance of salvaging the season. The bigger picture is it's been really underwhelming from Manchester United. They've not kicked on from last season when they reached 2 cup finals. They qualify for the top 4 and all look rosy. In terms of the summer, I think it's huge. You know, so Jim Ratcliffe kept his powder dry in January. They didn't sign anybody then. I think they're going to have to operate under fairly strict financial parameters, which means big name players will be moved on. I think Cascarino will go probably to Saudi Arabia. We know that Rafael Varane, another big earner, is out of contract. I'd still cash in on Harry Maguire. I know he scored yesterday, but I thought he was poor. And if you look at the second goal, he's running in treacle, trying to catch Fulham on the counter-attack. And you talk about Marcus Rashford, I think it's fanciful to suggest that a club of the stature of PSG are looking at Marcus Rashford on his wages, on current form. I think that's part of the problem. There's too many players in that dressing room with egos that at the moment are bigger than their talents. Rashford's produced nothing this season to suggest that a juggernaut like PSG are going to come and put an offer on the table. And that's a headache because he's I think he's United's top earner pretty much. They see him as the poster boy, having come through the academy. But he's not performing like that. And, you know, there was an initial uplift after what happened in Belfast. He scored that goal against Wolves and you thought, well, maybe he will knuckle down now. He, for me, has been the biggest disappointment of the lot this season. I think he needs to take a look at himself in the mirror and ask the question, am I doing myself justice? Because he's a really talented player. The answer is no. And if I'm Gareth Southgate watching Marcus Rashford, he's nowhere near the playing for the Euros. Nowhere near it.
Alex, are Manchester United a club top 6 as the Chelsea, Tottenham, Liverpool, Man City? are they a club that's, well, are they deserved to be a top six club? Only in name only?
I think you're right. In name only. The only positive thing about Manchester United at the moment is their history, and nobody can take that away from them. But it's a long way away from being able to compete with the likes of Man City and Liverpool. I thought Sir Jim Ratcliffe gave a brilliant opening interview, and he said that himself. This isn't going to happen overnight. They're not deserving of playing in the Champions League next season. They've been overtaken. They've been overtaken in Manchester by City. They've been overtaken in the Northwest by both City and Liverpool. They've been overtaken by Arsenal. This season, they've been overtaken by Aston Villa. I was just about to say that, and Tottenham. So the fact they're still clinging on to potentially finishing in the top six, I think is a pretty damning reflection, actually, of the rest of the Premier League. Clubs like West Ham United, who've not kicked on as would have been expected, but they're nowhere near it. Manchester United, the squad's not very good. We can talk about effort and commitment. That's not been up to standard, but the team isn't very good. What they've relied on this season is moments of individual quality to win game. Rasmus Højlund in the first 10 minutes against Luton, and in particular with that second goal. Garnacho has come up with the occasional moment, but there's no structure. There's no cohesiveness in the team, and that's the biggest worry. If you're Sir Jim Ratcliffe and you're making a verdict on Erik ten Hag, who's effectively on trial between now and the end of the season, what's the philosophy? What's the playing style? What are you doing in training? Because even when they're winning games, they're playing really badly, Manchester United. And I think the writing's on the wall for Erik ten Hag. I'm not sure he survives the summer.
All right, Alex, thank you for being with us this morning. Much appreciated.
The Sunday Sports Breakfast with Natalie Sawyer and Tony Cascarino. Sunday mornings from 6 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.